Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of 10,000 Stitches, a podcast about me, my life, and knitting socks. So, welcome. My name is Andy. I'll go over first, where you can find me online. I'll probably forget that I've already said this, and I'll probably say it at the end too, but whatever. Like I said, my name is Andy. You can find me online. My blog is thepearlbug.com, and I will link to that down in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube. Otherwise, if you're watching it on the blog, you're already there. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Ravelry, all as Pearlbug. P-U-R-L-B-U-G, Pearlbug. And I think that's about it. That's most of what I do. I should note that I am not yet very active on Ravelry. I kind of just use it as a repository for patterns that I want to try, but I'm working to become better about it. Anyway, like I said, this is a podcast about me, my life, and knitting socks. So today I'm going to, sorry, if you see me looking over to the side, it's because I have my notebook over here. So I'm just checking to make sure that I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Anyway, so today I'm going to tell a little bit about myself as a person and about myself as a knitter, and talk about why I am starting this podcast, talk about why I'm choosing to knit socks and kind of a big upcoming sock project that I have. I'll go through finished objects, works in progress, and then coming up, and I'll talk about that big sock project that I mentioned. And since this is my first episode, I'll go ahead and go through my stash as well, although it's not really much of a stash, but whatever, I'll talk about it anyway. So yeah, a little bit about me as a person. So I am, like I said, my name is Andy. I am 26. I grew up in the suburbs of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then I went to undergrad in River Falls, Wisconsin, which is this tiny little town just over the border into Wisconsin. So it's only about an hour from where I grew up. In undergrad, I studied physics and chemistry with a minor in German. So I'm kind of a nerd. And then I finished up undergrad, and then I went to grad school in Lincoln, Nebraska. And there I was studying physics. I was in a PhD program for physics. I did all my coursework and everything. I had decided that I wanted to do particle physics for kind of my dissertation and stuff. And so I was working on that, and I was first involved on a project that took me to Argentina for a couple weeks one summer, and then I got involved on a project at the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, working on one of the detectors there. And that was going really great. I really love particle physics. It's my favorite field of physics, obviously. But I chose to not complete my PhD because there were a lot of reasons. I just wasn't loving being in grad school, and the project I was working on, it wasn't very definite how long it was going to take me to finish out my PhD, and I just didn't want to wait forever. So I got my master's and finished up, and so that was in last December. Well, I got my master's last August. I finished my last class last December, and then about this time last year, a couple weeks after this time last year, I moved back to Wisconsin, got a job at a company as a engineer, not really an engineer, but anyway, I was designing signal systems for the railroad, and I did that for about 6 months, and then I relocated in August to Richmond, Virginia, which is where I currently live. The reason that I relocated is because my partner got into school out here, and I might as well tell a little bit about him. I don't want to tell too much about him, but I will talk about him, so might as well give a little bit of background on him. My partner's name is Wesley. We met when we were in undergrad. He also does physics, so that's how we met. We were lab partners. So, he was doing physics as well. We've been together for about 4 years now. He just texted me, that's what I was looking at. We've been together for about 4 years now. When I finished school, I went to grad school for a year by myself while he was finishing up his bachelor's. Then he came down and lived with me for about a year in Nebraska, and then he left and went actually to be that signal engineer job. He got a job there first, and then when I chose to leave grad school, then I got a job there. And then he was applying to grad schools and got into school out here in Virginia, and then we moved. So he, like I said, he studies physics, very different physics than what I did. Like I said, I did particle physics. He does theoretical physics, so very different, but at the same time, we have like a common background, so we can talk about a lot of things like that. So yeah. And yeah, so when we moved out here, I thought it'd be really easy to get a job. I apparently overestimated how qualified I am for a lot of jobs. So I have actually been unemployed since we moved out here in August. It's currently December. But I now have a job that I'll be starting after the new year, actually at the same university that Wesley goes to. So he's in the physics department at Virginia Commonwealth. I got a job as an instructor at Virginia Commonwealth. So that'll be interesting. It's kind of a fine line that we have to dance around because there's a lot of rules about employee-student relationships, but because we are already in a relationship, it seems like they can kind of make it work. So yeah, so you'll probably hear a little bit about kind of my experience starting that job. I haven't started yet, but yeah, after the new year, I can talk about that a little bit. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, then a little bit about me as a knitter. I learned to knit when I was younger. I'm pretty sure my mom taught me. I learned to knit when I was younger, and I made a lot of, truly horrendous scarves and things like that. And then I kind of set it down for a long time, and I focused a lot on crochet for a long time. I was a big crocheter, and I did a lot of like crochet toys, like the amigurumi toys. And I enjoyed that, but it became a little too fiddly for me because I didn't like attaching all the pieces and all of that, the like construction work. So then I picked knitting back up. I think I really picked it back up hard when I was in grad school, and I just had a lot of time on my hands when I was binge watching Netflix and nothing else to do. So I, started knitting again when I was in grad school, and again, not terribly complicated things. I'm not a garment knitter. I'm mostly an accessory knitter. I knit a lot of hats and scarves and shawls and now socks. So I just have no real interest in knitting garments. And I'll talk about that maybe a little bit when I get to like why I knit socks. But yeah, I don't have much of an interest in knitting sweaters and things like that. So I picked up knitting again when I was in grad school. Most of the knitting I did then was still with like acrylic yarn. Not that there's anything wrong with acrylic yarn. It was what I could afford on a grad student budget. But it wasn't until the beginning of 2015 that I really got into knitting with different kinds of fibers, because for the first time I went to a store that sold yarn that wasn't like Michael's or Joann Fabrics or Hobby Lobby. I went to a proper yarn store and actually bought some nice wool yarn. And part of the reason I knit with acrylic for so long was because I didn't think I could knit with wool. Like I thought that I was slightly allergic to wool, and it turns out I'm just sensitive to wool, like around my neck, like a lot of people are. But I can knit with wool just fine, and I can wear certain wool accessories. I just can't really wear like wool scarves or shawls. So go figure. So yeah, so the beginning of 2015 was when I really started knitting with nicer yarns and exploring different kinds of yarns. Before then, I had never knit with a fingering yarn before, a fingering weight yarn. It had all been worsted weight. So it was the first time I really knit with fingering weight yarns. I knit my first socks at the beginning of this year. So yeah, 2015 has really been a year of a lot of knitting growth for me, I think. I would say that like I've really gotten serious into knitting this year. So, and it's gotten more serious in the sock knitting since I moved out here to Virginia, because like I said, I had expected to be employed right away and then I wasn't. So I've had a lot of time to just kind of sit around, and I could either be doing this or I could be knitting. So I chose to knit. So yeah. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about why I'm starting this podcast, and then I'll talk a little bit about why I choose to knit socks primarily. So I'm starting this podcast because I'm not new to YouTube or making videos or the blogging world or anything. If you go to my blog, you'll see that I blog mostly about writing instruments. I've had that blog for, I don't know, a year or so. I've been blogging in some capacity about writing instruments for at least a year. And I've been making videos for about as long, I think, for that kind of stuff. So, and then when I started my new blog, The Pearl Bug, I had intended for it to be a mashup of my love of writing instruments and my love of knitting. But I didn't really know how to blog about knitting because I don't know, I just didn't know how to do it. So lately I've actually been watching a lot of knitting podcasts here on YouTube, and I was like, oh, that's a way I could do it. I have no problem sitting down in front of the camera and just chit-chatting about knitting and stuff for however long it takes. I know I'm a little bit awkward, but you know, who isn't? It's not meant to be perfect, and I don't tend to edit myself or anything after the fact, so what you see is what you get. So yeah, so I wanted to, so this is nothing new for me. I'm comfortable doing this kind of stuff. Where I'm uncomfortable is with knitters in real life. Because I don't know that many other knitters. Because I've always been a lot younger than most people I think who knit. So I don't have an easy time connecting with knitters in real life. Even like when I go to like yarn stores now, I always feel really uncomfortable because for me, knitting is very solitary and very about me. And so I have a hard time talking to other knitters. So this is sort of my way of trying to make some connections with other knitters and maybe get more comfortable interacting with other knitters, at least via the internet, and then hopefully that will bleed over into my real life. Because I'd like to make friends with other knitters. I have a hard time with it. And part of that's because I'm awkward because I'm a scientist, so there's that. But I don't think that's most of it. I think it's just that I'm not used to interacting with other knitters. So that's kind of why I am making this podcast. And today is Tuesday, December 8th. This will be uploaded and released on Wednesday, December 9th. I'm planning on usually releasing new podcasts on Wednesdays. I'm going to shoot for every week, and why will become apparent a little bit later. But I'm going to shoot for every week, releasing on Wednesdays. But I will probably pre-record them since I will be working a full-time job and not have time to record during the week. But I'll try in the future to say at the beginning of each episode the day that I'm recording and then the day it will be released so that becomes clear. But yeah. Okay, so I need a drink of water. Pardon my reach. Oh, that's a horrible noise. That is a horrible, horrible noise. Okay, so let's talk about why I knit socks. Like I said, I'm not a garment knitter. And the reason that I'm not a garment knitter is one, because I just don't have the patience for it. I started knitting a sweater and I just don't have the patience for that. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. I like small, quick projects. I like things like hats and shawls and things like that are easy to transport, easy to knit kind of wherever it is that I want to sit and knit them, and easy to finish. I also don't like the finishing process. I don't like seaming. I don't like blocking. I don't block anything that I make. So things like hats and stuff, I don't block them. You know why? Because you have a great hat blocker right here. Same with socks. I don't feel the need to block socks because I have two really good sock blockers on the ends of my legs. So I just can't be bothered to block things. I can't be bothered to finish things nicely. So that really counts out a lot of that kind of stuff that requires that. Also, I am very tall. I'm 5'10", and I have a very long torso. So knitting sweaters is just, I just don't have the patience to knit that much sweater. You know, I really like my sweaters to be very long so that they cover my entire torso, and I just don't have the patience for that. I'd rather just go buy one, you know? That's just all there is to it. So, and I could knit for Wesley. He would appreciate knit sweaters, but he wants his sweaters knit at like 12 stitches per inch, like some just ridiculous gauge. And even though he's 5 inches shorter than me, so it'd be much smaller than knitting one for myself, I just don't have the patience for that either. I love him, I just don't love him that much. So that's why I don't knit garments. You know, I knit a lot of hats, I knit a lot of stuff like that. And now I'm knitting socks. Because socks are quick and easy. I can knit a sock within a couple of days if I'm really working at it. So that's fun. I enjoy knitting with sock yarn because it comes in so many different fun colors and stuff like that. And I feel like there's a lot that you can do with socks. You know, like you can do lace on socks. You can do cables on socks. You can do stranded knitting on socks. So socks kind of encompass pretty much all that there is to do with knitting, but just in a much smaller form factor. And when I finish, I can use them. You know, like it's a usable good. It's not something like a shawl where it's like, well, I might wear this a couple of times a month. You know, it's like socks. I have to wear socks every day. So, you know, it produces a utility good, and I really enjoy that. Also, and I don't know if you can tell this from what I'm wearing, but my wardrobe is pretty much all black and white and shades of gray. So, you know, this is a black and white dress. I'm wearing black tights. I have black boots and black shoes. And this is a result of careful curation of my wardrobe. I'm a minimalist. I want my wardrobe to be very simple and plain to reduce a phenomenon called decision fatigue, wherein basically every decision you have to make during the day takes some amount of energy, and you have a limited amount of energy for that. So basically when you use up all of your decision energy deciding what to wear for the day and what to do with your makeup and how to do your hair, that leaves you with not a lot of energy for the rest of the day. So it's been shown that very successful people tend to be very boring. You know, they wear the same things every day. They eat the same thing for breakfast and lunch and dinner. They have the same routine. They're very boring. But then again, they produce really great work. So if you can cut down on those decisions you have to make for the very mundane things, it makes your life way easier and gives you more energy to be productive with the rest of your day. So my wardrobe tends to be all black and white and shades of gray because it all matches. You know, I can grab whatever dress happens to be at the front in my closet, and I can grab a pair of tights, and that's it. You know, everything matches, so I don't have to think about it. So anyway, so my wardrobe is pretty much all black. So socks are one of the ways that I can bring some color into my wardrobe in a fun sort of way. So like right now I'm wearing these purple socks. Because, you know, if they hide within my shoes, that's fine. It doesn't matter what color they are, and they're fun and exciting. And yeah, and I enjoy different colors. So that's why I knit socks, because they're easy and fast and they're utility good, and they bring some color into my otherwise very boring wardrobe. So yeah. And then I guess I'm going to... So I'm going to switch up my order a little bit. I'm going to talk about my sock project. That will be coming up, and then I'll talk about the actual projects and things. So because I love knitting socks, and I've knit I think 7, 8, I'm on pair 9 since moving out to Virginia. So pair 9 within 4 months. I have decided that I want to try and knit 50 pairs of socks in 2016. I realize that's very ambitious given that I will be working a full-time job. So it may get downgraded to 50 total socks. So 25 pairs, but I'm going to shoot for 50 pairs. And if I don't make it, I don't make it, and that's fine. But my goal is to knit roughly a pair of socks per week because I'll only be knitting socks. And so, yeah, that's my goal for 2016. And I'll probably talk more about the specifics of this maybe next week or the week after as we get closer to 2016. But yeah, and it's, you know, I have some guidelines drawn up for myself. I have some patterns picked out that I want to try so that it's not just aimlessly knitting. And I have some other kinds of socks, you know, like, oh, I want to knit a rainbow sock, and I want to knit a neon sock and things like that. So it's not just going to be 50 boring vanilla socks, or otherwise there'd be no point for me to podcast. But that's part of the reason for the podcast is I want to hold myself accountable, and I want to have a new pair of socks to show every week to say, look, this is what I made this week, and here's the next one that I'm making, and here's the yarn that I'm using, and all of that. So yeah, 50 pairs of socks in 2016. And like I said, I'll talk more about that another week. But yeah, so let's talk about some socks. Oh, and the reason that this podcast is named 10,000 Stitches is because there are roughly 10,000 stitches in one sock, or at least 10,000 stitches in a pair, for sure. Like I said, I'm 5'10", so my foot is 26 centimeters long. 5'10", for those of you who use the metric system, is 175, 180 centimeters tall. So yeah. Anyway, so my foot's about 26 centimeters long, so I don't have a small foot. So my socks have a lot of stitches in them. Anyway, so let's talk about some socks. I'm not going to show finished objects, like older finished objects. I will probably show those in another week when all of my socks are clean, because some of them are in the laundry and need to be washed. So once they are all clean, I will try and show all of the socks that I have made this year. But for now, I'm going to show a couple of recently finished objects. Or one recently finished object and one work in progress. I'm also a monogamous knitter. I tend to only work on one pair of socks at a time, partly because I only have one set of sock needles right now. I have some more coming in the mail, which hopefully I'll be able to talk about next week. But even then, I don't like to knit on more than one project at a time, because I feel like then you just wind up with projects that sit unfinished. You know, on Instagram, I will see people talk about like a pair of socks that took them months to make, and I'm like, how? How did that take you so long? Well, because they started on other things and they left it just sitting because they got bored. You know, it's like I'd rather just get it done. So anyway, let's talk about some finished objects. So I've been working on Christmas socks recently for my mother and her boyfriend. So I've been working on some Christmas socks, and I have one pair done and one pair almost done that I should finish up today, I think. So the pair that is done is knit with this yarn. This is an Opal Classics. It's the Luxurious colorway. It's kind of this like blue and cream. And so this is what it looks like. So it looks like this. So it's kind of a nice navy blue. I think it's showing up a little bit, that's a little bit more true to color. So it's a navy blue with these small little stripes of cream that run through it. And so this sock is for my mother's boyfriend. It's a 72 stitch sock. This is the first 72 stitch sock I've ever done. And you'd think that it shouldn't be that big of a difference from like 64 is what I normally do. To go from 64 to 72, it's only a difference of 8 stitches per round. But oh my gosh, does that feel like a ton more stitches. So anyway, so this is a 72 stitch sock. It was knit toe up with a garter stitch panel down the middle, and an afterthought heel. And then just 2x2 ribbing up at the top. So it's only about, I think, 4 inches from the heel up to the very top of the ribbing. I did that on purpose because I just didn't know how tall they like to wear their socks, and so I figured it's probably better to go with something. So a 4-inch sock looks sort of like this. So it comes above the ankle, but it doesn't go so far up the leg that if someone doesn't like wearing high socks, you know, they're going to feel uncomfortable with it. So I figured that's a good starter sock, and if they tell me they like longer socks, then I'll probably make them longer ones too. But anyway, so yeah, so this one, it needs to be washed. It's a little wonky from the garter stitch stuff, but I'm waiting for more socks to wash because it seemed like kind of a waste to just wash a single pair. But yeah, this is my first pair of socks that I've ever knit with Opal yarn, which is 75% virgin wool and 25% polyamide. I like it. I don't know, like I'm used to knitting with Patons Kroy, so this feels kind of similar. It's kind of rough. It's a little bit thinner than the Kroy that I've been used to working with. But I like it just fine. I'll be interested to see kind of how it feels after a soak in some wool wash. And I'm sure it'll soften up because they're going to machine wash them probably, so I'm sure it'll soften up in the machine as well. But yeah, I liked it fine. I would knit with Opal again. I don't love it. It's not like super duper soft, and I certainly wouldn't knit anything that would like touch my neck, but for socks I think it's fine. I still have quite a bit left, like I showed. I don't have a scale, so I can't really weigh this, but I'd say this is maybe 30 grams? I don't know. This is probably enough to knit a good portion of another sock, at least a shorter sock, for myself if I did contrasting heels and toes. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's my finished object. Go ahead and move that stuff over here. My work in progress is another Christmas sock. This one is the one for my mother. And I have one of these finished, and I'm working on the second sock. So I can show you the finished sock here. Let's see if I can get it to really, there we go. That really shows off the pattern. So this is another Opal yarn. This one is This one is Helga der Detective. Yeah. And this is another 75% virgin wool, 25% polyamide. It's kind of this really pretty, like pink and brown and cream and orange striping. Actually, Wesley helped me to pick out both of these yarns because I just couldn't choose. You know, so there were all these yarns there, and I was like, I like all of them. So he helped me choose ones for these two socks. So this one is using the kind of like texture pattern here. This is from the Nutkin pattern, which I will link. Any notes and links and things I will put on the blog post for this video. So below on YouTube, I will link to my blog. And then if you find the post for this episode, I'll put other links to patterns and things in there. So this is the Nutkin pattern. But if you're not familiar with this pattern, I have to think here. Okay, so this side is the side that these are created using yarn overs and SSKs. And so that pattern has just this. So on the top of the foot, it has this repeated twice. And then when you get to the leg, it repeats that 4 times. And I think that one's actually a top-down pattern with a short row heel. These I did toe up with a short row heel. Not like it makes a difference. But having only the swirls only going one way means that a lot of people's socks tend to twist, and I just don't think it looks good. Like, I think it looks unbalanced. So like you can see, I mirrored the pattern on the top, and then I did the same thing when I got to like the leg of the sock. I did the mirrored pattern on the back as well. And again, this one is about 4 inches from the top of the short row heel to the top of the cuff. So yeah, so that's that one, and then I'm working on the other one, and I have, I think, like maybe 2 more pattern repeats to do beyond the heel and then the ribbing. So like I said, I should get that finished up today, no problem. And then I'll probably get these socks soaked and washed and everything, and then I won't have to think about them, and they'll be done. Because this is the first, I don't know if you can hear that siren. Yeah. We live very close to the fire station. We live very close to the fire station, and it's on this road. So whenever they go by, we have to deal with the sirens. And like in my normal, like just day-to-day life, I don't notice them too much anymore. They don't bother me. They don't wake me up at night. But when I'm recording, I notice it intensely. And it's just something I have to deal with. It's worse in the summer when like when we had the windows open and stuff. I pretty much couldn't record because there was just too much noise from the street and stuff, because we're like right at an intersection too. So you get a lot of noisy trucks stopping at the light. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so this is the first time I've really knit socks for other people, and I kind of hate it. I mean, I'm sure I'll get used to it, but especially not having them here, you know, the people these socks are for back in Minnesota, it's a lot tougher because, you know, I can't try them on as I go, so I have to just guess. You know, I mean, I have tracings of their feet, and I know how long their feet are, so, you know, I can do the math and everything, but I kind of just have to assume that they'll fit. So that's a little bit stressful. I don't enjoy that very much. And kind of just being under the deadline is a little bit stressful, even though, like I said, it's only December 8th and these are for Christmas. So I'm going to finish them in plenty of time. But it's still just like knowing that there's a deadline stresses me out a little bit. So I'll be glad to be done with them and just know that I don't have to think about them anymore, and then I can be a little bit more leisurely with my knitting for the rest of the month. Although I might wind up knitting another Christmas gift. But we'll see about that. We'll see how ambitious I feel after finishing these socks. But yeah, so that's my work in progress. Up next, I am going to cast on another pair of socks. I have new needles coming in the mail, so I kind of wanted to wait to cast on more socks until I got those, but they just shipped. Well, they'll probably go out actually in the mail today, and so I might not get them till like the end of the week or early next week. And I don't really want to wait that long. So I'll probably cast on another pair of socks just with some yarn that I have hanging around. I'm going to play around a little bit too with short row heels and stuff and figuring out how they fit me. So maybe I'll just do that. Maybe I'll just make a pair of basic vanilla socks with a short row heel and see how I like those. But anyway, that's what's next. I'm sure I'll have a pair of socks to show by next week. I just don't exactly know what they are. So yeah. So let's talk a little bit about my stash. I don't think I mentioned this. So when we moved out here, we moved with one car and whatever we could fit in the back of it. So we bought all of our furniture out here. Once we got here, we pretty much bought everything once we got here. So because we moved in Wesley's car, which is a 2-door, small little car, and so whatever we could fit in the back, that's what we brought. So I didn't bring very much for yarn and knitting stuff when I came here. I basically had a de-stash before I moved, which kind of was a bummer because I gave away a lot of what I now would like to have, like sock yarn. I gave away a lot of really decent sock yarn, and so it's kind of a bummer, but that's how it goes. The person I gave it to really appreciated it, and I'm sure she used it in a creative way. So I don't feel bad about that. I'm like, oh man, that was but anyways, so basically all of the yarn that I have here, I have acquired since moving out here. And like I said, it's mostly Patons Kroy because that's what I can get at like the chain yarn stores. And I bought a whole bunch of it like when it was on sale. I pretty much only buy Patons Kroy when it's on sale because when I can get it for like $3, $4 a skein, then I feel like it's an okay deal. I'm not going to pay $6 a skein for it because I need 2 balls to make a pair of socks, and at $12 a pair, it's just not that good. But at like less than $10 a pair, that works for me. And I'll talk more when I really talk about my sock project for 2016. I'll talk more about budgeting for socks. But suffice it to say, especially because I've been unemployed, the cheaper the better has kind of been my motto since I got out here. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about my stash. So what I was trying to say is all of the yarn that I have, I've acquired since I've gotten out here. So my stash is not very impressive, but that's okay. I'd much rather have a reasonable amount of yarn and know that I'll actually use it and work through it than have a huge stash and feel like I'll never knit all the way through it. Because I feel like that almost gives people permission to just keep buying more yarn. It's like, well, I'll never use all of this, so what's the harm in a couple more balls? Versus like my stash, I could very easily work through it. And then it's like, okay, well, yeah, let's buy some more. I don't know. That's it. It's a similar problem with like fountain pens, the other thing I blog about. People will acquire ink for fountain pens far beyond what they can ever use. And I just I don't like that. I don't like getting to that point. You know, when I moved, I gave away a bunch of ink as well because I just had more than I could use in colors that I don't use. So I'd much rather have a small amount in things that I will use than a ton that I can never possibly work through. But that's just me. I don't have a problem with knitters who have a huge stash. So, but anyway, so my stash. So I have 1 ball of opal that I bought when I bought the other yarns. This one I bought for myself. Wesley picked this out. And it's really pretty. It's these like pinks and blues and greens and purples. I actually started knitting a pair of socks, probably twice with this, and I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with it. So, and I'm still not entirely sure. Like, it's so pretty. I'm not sure that I want it to be socks. I might make it into like a hat, like a sock head hat, because I feel like it would be really good for that. And I might do that for like my holiday knitting, because we're going back home for Christmas for the first time since we moved. So this would be something really good where like I don't have to really think about it. I'm just gonna keep knitting and knitting and knitting. So I might do that with it. But anyway, this one is another opal, Kala der Schurke. Again, 75% virgin wool, 25% polyamide. So then the rest of my stash, I have 2 balls of Patons Kroy Sing in the Blues stripes. I have 1 ball of blue striped rag. I know this is really popular. I see a lot of like people knitting socks out of this. I don't love it. I like it more once it's actually knit up, but I wish the colors, like I wish the yellow and orange were more vibrant. And I have a sock here that I've made out of it. This is a sad, lonely sock. But I wish the yellow and the orange were more vibrant because I feel like the other colors show up really well. And then I feel like the yellow just kind of looks like someone peed on my yarn. I don't know. I don't love it, but whatever. I have one ball of that. And then I have 2 balls of the flax color. And this, I originally had bought just kind of as like a junk yarn to use on heels and toes and things, but I'm actually coming to appreciate it more and more in its own right as a beautiful kind of neutral color. So this is probably one that if I can get Kroy on sale, I will probably stock up on like this one and then a couple of other colors. I probably am done with the striped colors. I'm kind of sick of the Kroy self-striping yarns because I just don't find them to be that interesting. And then I have this box here full of little remnant balls, so I'll kind of go through that because it also gives a little bit of an overview of the yarns that I've used that I don't have complete balls of. So I have another, I don't know, lot of a ball of the blue striped rag and another good partial ball of that. So between these 3 balls, I probably have enough to make a pair of socks for sure. I also have another decently sized ball of the Singing the Blues stripes. And then I have 2 small little chunks of the Route 66. This one is another self-striping one. You can kind of see it. It has these darker blues and lighter blues. It has some kind of jacquard kind of things, some browns. There's green in it as well. I don't know if I can find the green. There you can just barely see inside the hint of green. It's nice, it's fun. I've made a couple socks out of this. I don't know that I would buy it again anytime soon because it's very, it doesn't lend itself well to any kind of an interesting stitch pattern. Like you kind of just have to let the yarn do its thing. So I don't know. I don't know what I'll do with these, but I have a decent amount of this, which is the Gray Brown Marl, which is a self-striping yarn that has, it's red and brown and gray and then kind of a lighter beige color. I also have a partially made sock using this that I'm not going to finish, so I'll probably rip that out. And at that point, I'll have enough for a pair of socks out of that. I have some of this, this is the Kroy FX, and I really like the FX colors. They're really growing on me. They're really quite beautiful. Did I put something? What the heck? I found another ball. I don't know where. Whatever. I don't know. The FX colors are really beautiful. I especially really like this clover colors because it has these really beautiful bright greens and some really pretty bright oranges and reds. And to me, they're autumn. Like it's autumn colors and I love it. So this is another one that if I could find it on sale, I would probably stock up on this. I have 2 little balls of the FX, and this is the Cameo colors, and this is actually what made this sock here. So it has, you know, pinks and purples and some kind of black kind of bits. This is another one that I really enjoyed. I liked that color as well. I have a couple balls of, again, the FX. This is the Cascade colors. This one I don't love as a sock on its own. You can see. So again, it has some kind of like almost black sections, and then it has some very beautiful bright like teal kind of sections. And like I said, I don't love this one on its own, but I really like this for heels and toes on like a flax colored sock. I think like this really just gives it a little pop of color on the heel and toe for an otherwise simple but beautiful sock. So I like that. I would also use maybe the Cameo colors for the same thing. So yeah, so if I could get them on sale again cheap, I'd probably pick up more of the flax and then more of the FX colors, but I'd probably be done with the stripy ones. And that's it. That's the scraps that I have. One of my things for 2016 is I want to make a pair of scrap socks. So I'll have to, at some point, get up the patience to do that. But yeah, that's my stash. Pretty small. But it works. You know, like I said, I'd much rather know that I can actually work through all of it. And my guess is that I will probably wind up acquiring yarns in big batches. Because while we do have a yarn store here in well, there's a couple yarn stores, but there's one that I have found, and I like it just fine. The problem is they don't have the selection of sock yarn that I want. So, you know, they have a decent amount of opal and stuff, but otherwise, like, they had some that was like, you know, 100% superwash merino, which to me doesn't make very durable socks. And so, just in general, they didn't have the selection that I wanted. So I will probably order things off the internet, and when I do that, I'll probably order them in, you know, like $100 batch orders and stuff like that, because that way I don't have to pay for shipping. But I also want to hit up the yarn store that's near Wesley's parents' house when we go home for Christmas, because that was like the first yarn store I ever went to, and they have a really decent selection of sock yarn. So I want to pick up some balls of sock yarn there. We'll have to see, because when we go home, you know, we're only taking carry-on luggage and we have to fly. So we'll have to see how much I can actually fit and bring back with me. But on the other hand, I will be bringing home Christmas gifts and not bringing those back. So that will free up some space in my luggage. So hopefully I'll have some yarn acquisitions after the new year. But otherwise, I don't think I plan to acquire any more yarn before then, partly because I just want to use up what I have before then. And so, yeah, we'll see. I may make another run to the yarn store here in town if I run out of stuff. But my goal is to not, you know, binge buy any yarn before the end of the year. So yeah, that's it, I guess, for today. I don't know how long these are going to wind up being. My guess is probably somewhere between a half hour and an hour. I don't see myself talking for more than an hour, but I might. We'll have to see. Maybe when I have more interesting things to say about finished objects and stuff. We'll see. I don't know. Like I said, you can find me on Ravelry, Instagram, and Twitter as Purlbug, Purlbug. You can find my blog at thepurlbug.com, and I'll link that down below. Feel free to chit-chat with me on any of those sites. Like I said, I'm not super active on Ravelry, but I want to be. I want to get more involved on Ravelry. Even digitally, I have a hard time connecting with other knitters because I don't feel like I can talk to them. And I don't feel like I'm a good enough knitter. I don't know. I feel bad saying that because, you know, I'm a decent knitter. Like, I would consider myself a solid intermediate knitter. Like, I can do most things, and I can read most patterns, and that's fine. But I don't know. I just don't consider myself a knowledgeable knitter, maybe. Maybe it's just that I'm too used to knitting by myself, and I need to get used to talking with other people about knitting. But yeah, feel free to interact with me on any of those sources. Feel free to leave me comments down below in the comments on YouTube. Let me know if you have any questions or anything like that, anything you'd like me to talk about. I plan to talk in coming weeks when I don't have, you know, stash things to talk about, or if I run out of other things to talk about. I plan to talk a little bit about kind of some specifics of sock knitting, like, you know, about different heel constructions or different toe constructions or different things about sock knitting, since that's kind of what I feel most knowledgeable about. One of my things, I don't know why it suddenly got so dark. Anyway, part of the reason I want to knit 50 socks in 2016 is because, you know, they say it takes like 10,000 hours or something to become an expert at something. And, you know, while that's, you know, whatever, you know, it's like, I want to become a really good sock knitter. I don't want to just be a good knitter because I feel like I'm already a decent knitter. I want to become really good at making socks. Like, I want to be one of those people who can make a pair of socks in their sleep and who can make really beautiful, gorgeous socks, and not just because they're using beautiful, gorgeous yarn, who can take, you know, something plain and simple like Patons Kroy and make a beautiful sock out of it. So that's what I want to be. So it's part of the reason I'm focusing on socks in 2016, is because I want to become an expert sock knitter. So I'm hoping that I can use some of that experience to help other people knit socks, maybe beginning sock knitters or sock knitters who have made a few and they're like, yeah, I can make them, but I don't love them. They don't fit right. They don't whatever. I'd like to be better and help people to work through those problems. So let me know if you have any questions about sock knitting, about me, about my history, about Richmond, Virginia. Not that I can really speak super intelligently on that. Yeah, and I feel like I should have a question for you guys. So a question I'd like to pose to people. So if you haven't ever knit socks before, why not? I always used to say that I would never knit socks, you know, and I still say that about some things. I say that, like, I will never knit sweaters. I'm sure I probably will eventually, but at this point, I don't ever see myself knitting a sweater. And so I always used to say that about socks. I was like, I will never knit socks. You know, that's just silly. I don't want to knit socks. Why would I want to knit socks? And now look at me. I'm going to knit 50 pairs of socks in the next year. So obviously things changed, and I can't really tell you why I didn't want to knit socks, except that, you know, the yarn is so thin and the needles are so small, and it seems very daunting if you haven't done it before. And now, of course, that I've done it, I'm like, whatever. It's mostly just knitting, going around and around and around. So if you've never knit socks before, why not? What would it take to convince you that knitting socks is a good thing to do? Or if you are a sock knitter, or if you are someone who has knit socks but don't love knitting socks, why not? What is keeping you from loving knitting socks? Because I think socks can be a great project for everyone. And I think everyone should always have a pair of socks, you know, because they're so easy to tuck into your purse or take with you on vacation or something like that. So why not? If you don't love knitting socks, or if you haven't knit socks before, tell me why not, because I'd love to convince you otherwise. I guess that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!